Hello, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us today, a brand new guest. Her name is Karen Hudes. She is an attorney, she is a banker, and she is a whistleblower. Karen Hudes, thank you so much for joining us today from Maryland. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I couldn't be happier than to be here on your show.
Well, you work for the World Bank for a better part of 20 years. You are an Ivy League trained attorney. You went to Ivy League school. I think you went to Yale. You work for the World Bank as a lawyer. You're a banker, and you were a whistleblower inside the World Bank, not just one time, but several times. It crescendoed with a big, almost $1 billion, whistleblowing fraud, malfeasance in the World Bank in Indonesia. And for that, you got a pink slip in 2009. Congratulations, my dear.
Thank you.
You are one of the good people. Listen, I called you the other day on the pre-interview, and I said, Karen Hudes? You said yes. And I said, boy, I want to interview you about, I have you all set up. I want to just do a little pre-interview about banking. And I said, boy, things are a mess, huh? Oh, no, things aren't a mess. No, we can fix this. And I was like, wow, this is refreshing. And you said, everybody knows what's going on. Everybody in the world knows what's going on with America. We know who the thugs and the criminals are. And you made a reference to a baby. Tell me how the rest of the world is looking at our Federal Reserve and our banking system and how the U.S. is acting in the global world of finance.
Well, their game is up. When they were signed on 100 years ago, President Wilson knew that he had sold the United States downstream. And he really regretted it. And there were a couple of presidents who tried to set things straight. And both of those ended up assassinated. One of them was JFK. One of them was Abraham Lincoln. And our current president, Barack Obama, is trying very hard to do what he can to make it possible for those of us in the know to fire these thugs. He doesn't want to get himself shot. He's leaving it up to us. And we're doing a good job. I've been in touch with all 50 governors. There's a special governor's council, which has one of the co-chairs is my governor, Martin O'Malley. And I've been writing to these guys, and I've been saying, okay, we are not going to let our country get sold downstream. You are going to do your job. And, it's not an easy thing to do. It's pretty dangerous. People have gotten into a lot of hot water for standing up to these thugs and crooks. And by the way, you don't have to take my word for it. There's a very accurate study that was done by the Federal Institute of Technology. They used data showing who owns all of the world's corporations, 43,000 of them. And they showed that there is a group of thugs that have bought these companies up and controls them behind the scenes. A lot of this is secret. You won't read about it in the press because they bought up the media. So the stories that people are hearing every day from their favorite newscast, this is all, what those companies want you to know, not what the reality is. And a lot of people are onto this. I think the latest survey about the trust of the American people in their media, it's tanked. It's, most people, more than a majority, knows that they're being systematically lied to by these thugs. So anyway, getting back to the Federal Reserve and the Bank for International Settlements, these groups are in cahoots with the biggest crooks of all, the Jesuits that bought up Bank of America, and they have little secret deals to try to apportion the riches of the world. And in the meantime, all of the countries of the world know that this thievery is going on, and we have been working together. I've been writing all of the ambassadors for the last 5 years since I was fired illegally. They knew I was their lawyer. They knew I was telling them the truth. And I said, you're not going to get away with this. And there's a group of World Bank whistleblowers from different countries, and one of them in particular, Elaine Colville, who's Scottish. The two of us have been writing to the UK Parliament, and the UK Parliament on the 20th of July just published our statements. My statement was, okay, guys, we're running out of time. It's time to get serious and tell these thugs and crooks that they're fired. And Elaine Colville said the UK Parliament better do its job. And that's up there for everybody to read.
Well, when you're talking about being fired, you were telling me in the interview yesterday, and I want to work on this, and it's a theme that a lot of people have brought up on my side, a lot of very smart people, and you're kind of backing them up, and you're saying the rest of the world doesn't want to live under this yoke of the Federal Reserve, the Treasury system. They want to get rid of the dollar. They want to do away with the dollar. There's inflation, and what a lot of people are talking about is, this uprising in Egypt is fueled in part with all this inflation, and we are exporting inflation around the world, and governments are saying, hey, hold on with the dollars. We don't know if we need any more of these dollars. We want to use a different currency, a gold-backed currency, a Bitcoin. Hungary has, got rid of the euro supposedly, and they're issuing their own currency so they can get away from the inflation. Is that what you're seeing, a move away from the dollar on a grand scale?
Okay, what I'm saying is that we don't have to wait for anybody to fire the Fed or the Bank for International Settlement, because all the central bankers are part of this big club in Switzerland. What we should simply do is use our choice. The states, some of them, have already started recognizing silver and gold, the precious metals, as currency. They're entitled to do this. They should do this. There are other alternatives like Bitcoin, and there are other bankers that have set up currencies that are backed fully by precious metals. And we, the consumers, can choose which currencies to use that are legal. And that's what we're going to do in very short order. Because I can tell you, and you didn't follow up on one of the things I just said, so I'll say it again. We are talking about the biggest thuggery of all, and that is the Jesuits in the Vatican. And one of the things I have just found out...
Well, because, the new Pope is a Jesuit, right?
That's right. And what there have been
reports published reports of the allegations of the Vatican laundering money on a grand scale. Haven't heard too much about that recently, but that's I think that was before their most recent Pope got put in there. But yes, I mean, they have some sin there, don't they?
Greg, I'm going to tell you something which I just found out about, because let me step back a little bit and say how I got involved in all of this. They say follow the money. That's what I did. I saw that people were being lied to about the money, and you're not allowed to do that. When bonds are issued on the capital markets, and I bought a World Bank bond, you're entitled to accurate financial statements, and they were not being audited according to the auditing standards. So I sued the World Bank, and I sued KPMG, and then 188 ministers of finance settled my lawsuit. But I couldn't get that thing implemented. So I was trying to find out why not. And let me tell you what I just found out. I always thought that the CIA was the problem and the other intelligence agencies. Guess what? There's a grand intelligence agency that the Vatican puts out, and all of those other crooks are operating under the Vatican intelligence agency.
That's
what's going on.
The money is about the control, and the Vatican intelligence agency, the World Intelligence Agency, they're talking about we're fighting over money, over what money we're going to use, and who controls the money.
That's the thing I'm saying, Greg. They're not fighting. They've all agreed. The fighting is what we're led to believe. They're all in cahoots, just like all the banks are in cahoots. All of these intelligence agencies are in cahoots too. So we are completely being bamboozled. It's like a big theater of the absurd for the world. And in the meantime, every single citizen is getting ripped off, big time. It's all an agreed. For example, what's going on in Syria? I'll tell you what's going on in Syria, and this is because I'm not working just by myself. I'm working with a lot of whistleblowers, and there's one whistleblower in particular.
And just so you know, you're in contact with World Bank members also around the globe.
Yes. There's one of us from India. There's one of us from Ethiopia. I forgot the last time I mentioned the list. I forgot one of the best, most intelligent of us is from South Korea, and we are all working together. Just like these thugs are working together, but I was going to mention about what Mark told me about Syria. What's really going on is that there's natural gas, but you have to have a pipeline to get it to the market. So Qatar, which has all this natural gas, wanted to run a pipeline through Syria, and then they were going to reach the European market. Well, who's supplying the European market with gas?
The Russians.
The Russians. Okay. Saudi Arabia went to the Russians and said, if you stop protecting Syria, then we're going to sell you arms for cheap. And Russia said, no, I want my market for natural gas in Europe. So all of this business about dead babies and sarin gas, that is just all to keep us confused. Everything that's going on in the news is simply to keep us confused. We don't need to be confused. What we need to do is we need to turn around to these crooks with the crooks at the very top, and we need to say, no, you're not going to rip us off anymore. We've had enough.
I know you speak fondly of the president, and he is my president, and I have respect for the office, but he has signed into law the NDAA, where you can, drag somebody off and hold them intentionally, and, any quote-unquote terrorist. He has made all these drone strikes. I mean, his Justice Department just put Jesse Jackson Jr. in jail, and not a single one of these bankers has been tried, including people who have done money laundering for drug cartels and for people on the terror watch list. We have Jesse Jackson Jr. in jail for 30 months for $750,000, and John Corzine allegedly stole $1 billion. So, these guys are running wild.
He's an actor. He's told to play his part.
Oh, that's sad.
It is, but everybody is an actor.
Let me back up here. You're telling me the president is just an actor, just somebody to play a role, and don't get in our way. You're really not the president. We say you are, but you're not.
What I'm trying to say is that those presidents of ours who refused to go along with these crooks' agenda got murdered. All of them. And so there's a little bit of leeway, and they're doing what they can. And don't forget, we have to play our part, which is we have to admit that we have been bamboozled, and we're not going to be bamboozled anymore. And we will then take back what's ours. We won't let the crooks continue to rob us.
But this is
We've got a role to play.
This is going to be a painful process. I mean, they're going to come out and say, oh, you want your accounts insured? Well, you have to take a bail-in. Do you want this is what they're going to say. This is what they said over in Cyprus, which a lot of people say the IMF was involved, the ECB was involved, that this was a test market, Cyprus. And, oh, you want your insured deposits? Well, you have to agree to bail-ins. You have to agree to haircuts. You have to agree to all this stuff. And
that is only, Greg, if we stay stuck at one level of the theater. We don't have to stay stuck at that level. We can go up to the different level, which is what I'm telling you. Not just the central bankers, but the Vatican. For example, people don't know that their IRS revenue is going to the Vatican. They don't know that the municipalities are pre-funding their pensions for billions of dollars when it's unnecessary. We have got to sit down and we've got to follow the money and figure out where it's going and say, okay, that's our money, that's not your money, and we have to take it back. That's all.
Isn't this going to be painful? Aren't there going to be defaults? Aren't there going to be, their guy rates me, I've said this a couple of times in interviews, from Detroit, 29 years with a firefighter or a police officer. His funding for his pension is $9 billion in red ink, and they're going to get pennies on the dollar. And, I hear that, bankers are going to get 75 cents on the dollar, but pensioners are going to get 20, 10, 15 cents on the dollar. There are $3.7 trillion
underfunded
pensions. We have $10.8 trillion on deposit. We have $33 billion in insurance. There's going to be a bunch of defaults, isn't there? Is it going to be painful to take it back?
At the wrong level of the play. You are looking at paper currency. There was an agreement starting in the early 1900s to take all of the wealth of the world, the treasures, the gold, the diamonds, priceless treasures. These are now in a big vault in different places, buried. And this all can come out. But it's not going to come out until people start recognizing this reality. We have all got to look beyond. We have to pierce the corporate veil. That's the statement in law. When you look behind who owns the corporations, we have to pierce the corporate veil. We have to, all of us, do our homework. We can't say, oh, money is too complicated. Central banks are too complicated. We have all got to sit down and come to the table and see what's the real story. And we have to be responsible about it. And then we'll agree that we played a part too. We were bamboozled. We allowed these bankers to buy up media and tell us lies. and accept the lies, one story after another? Are we going to look at the fake reels about dead women and children from chemical warfare? Chances are those were actors.
You know, I got to tell you, I would think you were absolutely crazy if I didn't know and I went online and saw your resume and saw your deep resume and saw you work for the World Bank for 20 years and know you're a attorney, or you were the senior counsel for the World Bank. And this is just poing, eye-opening to hear you talk like this. I'm not putting you down. I'm just saying people should realize that you're not a kook. You were 20 years with the World Bank as their senior counsel. You were connected to world bankers globally and other whistleblowers, and you're saying that we've been robbed, and we are being robbed.
Let's go back 15 years, okay? And let me just say that everything that I'm saying, you can go on my website, www.kahudis.net, and you can go through the chronology, which is what happened in 2000 when I got involved in reform inside the World Bank, where the people who own the World Bank, it's like a big cooperative. The U.S. owns 16%, and the rest of the countries, 188 of them, own different amounts, and you get to vote in accordance with how powerful you are. Okay, so I was part of the board's decision that they were going to allow the World Bank to have more money, but only if they improved the human resources. And I was on that committee, and the agreement was that those managers that were doing a good job would get promoted, and those managers that were doing a bad job would either get training or they would get fired. And that reform got completely rolled back. We brought in somebody from IBM to do this, and he came to me. He said, Karen, I don't understand it. I say a manager's good and needs to be promoted, and that one gets fired. I say somebody is crooked, and that one gets promoted. What's going on here? He said, and I don't know how much longer I'm going to last. Alberto Bazan, he got fired. And after that, I just tried to find out what was going on. And you can watch and see exactly what was going on. Until I got involved in the Philippines, where the man who was the president of the Philippines, Joseph Estrada, was robbing the country blind. And what he did was he sold the second largest bank, Philippine National Bank, to a borrower who owned Philippine Airlines, Lucio Tan. His airline was in default to Philippine National Bank. And so I said, you know, you can't disperse the rest of the loan when this crook has gotten all those employee shares.
That was nearly $1 billion. That was near, just so everybody knows, that's nearly $1 billion in malfeasance.
Well, what happened was we canceled our loan for $200 million. The Japanese canceled their loan for $200 million, and the Philippines, who had their people who had their money on deposit in the bank, withdrew it, and the Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation had to bail out the bank for $500 million. And then the World Bank, at the end of that project, had to write a summary about how the project had gone. And they said, well, it wasn't a success, obviously, but we couldn't have known. I said, of course you could have known. I told you. And that's when they tried to fire me. And so I went, yeah.
They did fire you.
No, not at that point.
Oh, in 2009 they did.
2003.
Ultimately, they did.
But here's the beautiful part about it. The World Bank is many, many things. It's also a knowledge bank. And there was a political scientist, Jacek Kugler, who came to the World Bank. He had actually been involved in the defense intelligence industry first. And he developed a very accurate model, which, you know, it's garbage in, garbage out. But I modeled rule of law at the World Bank. I didn't realize that the World Bank was a microcosm of the world. But I did know that if the U.S. didn't start playing by the rules, that we were going to lose the ability to handpick the president of the World Bank.
Lose our leadership.
And that's what happened.
The rest of the world's going to go, you're crooks, no thank you.
So first I went to the Treasury Department, and I said, we've got to start playing by the rules. And they ignored me. So then I went to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, which at that point was chaired by Joe Biden. It had Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama as junior members. But it was Senator Lugar who wrote 3 letters to the World Bank saying, don't fire this lady. And they fired me anyway. But in the meantime, I had showed the board that I was working on rule of law. And so I had a lot of people backing me in the beginning. You should see how many people are backing me now. I have the whole world backing me. And it sounds like I'm being grandiose. But I'm not being grandiose. I'm just giving people a play-by-play book. And so this last bit that I'm telling you about, I didn't know any of this when I first started out. All I knew was that we were not playing by the rules, and then I had this very fancy stakeholder analysis. And this stakeholder analysis is showing me not only rule of law inside the World Bank, but the World Bank is a microcosm for the world. So I'm now dealing with rule of law. I'm dealing with justice in the world. Do you think people who see that I'm for real are going to help me? You better believe they're going to help me. I have gotten the most incredible help. It's just spectacularly beautiful to see.
Well, down here on the ground level, could we have bail-ins? Could people have their money taken from them? I mean, these guys are not going to give up. I mean, they're going to hang on to power.
No, of course not.
Could we have war in Syria? I mean, the president is waging war.
We can have war. We can wipe out the whole human race. There's no question about it. We have the capabilities to do that. But if we decide to all work together and all follow the money and all listen and all do our homework, what's going to happen is this gold that's buried in this vault is going to come out and pay off all these debts, and we are going to, each of us, have more money than we know what to do with. Each person on this planet. I'm telling you, that's what the actual facts are. And I can show you.
There's plenty of money out there. So the guy with a pension up in Detroit who's going to get 10 cents on the dollar, that doesn't have to happen. The student loans for $1 trillion doesn't have to happen. Our national debt for $17 trillion doesn't happen. I mean, Karen, that's a lot of dough. That's a lot of money.
What we're fighting about is not money. What we're fighting about two things. We're fighting about control, but the better way to describe it is we're fighting about love. We're fighting about whether we love our fellow man and whether we have self-respect. That's the real issue that we're dealing with here. And if you then think about the people that we are entrusting to be our spiritual leaders, who are actually doing the opposite. They're heading all of the spy agencies of the world and bamboozling all of us. We have got to sit down and sort things out.
Could there be, I'm going to get down to granular level, down to the street level, down to the individual level. Could there be bail-ins? Could people lose their insured deposits? Could people lose money? Could the stock market crash?
No.
Is any of that going to happen?
That's not what we're dealing with. That's not what we're dealing with.
Do what?
No, that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with whether we continue as humanity and have an earth or whether we blow ourselves up. That's what we're dealing with. That's the issue. Whether we love ourselves and each other enough to save the world or whether we're all going to go to hell in a handbasket. That's what this is about.
Karen Hudes, you have enlightened me, my dear. You can find out more at K-Hey Hudes. That's Hudes, K-A, Karen, K-A, Hudes, Hudes.net. Thank you very much for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com. I hope you come back.
We're all in this together, and I think we're going to do just fine. That's the whole point. We do love each other, and humanity will continue, and we're going to be fine.
Thank you for enlightening us on USA Watchdog. Thank you. You're a great guest. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. You're a great interviewer.